Hello and welcome to Imp's WWE Adventures podcast on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. You can help the network out by leaving us a 5-star review, also give a donation directly through Red Circle, and become one of the amazing community by joining the Social Suplex Discord. A link is in the description. Listen to the other top-notch shows here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. One Nation Radio, Keeping It Strong Style, All Things Elite, Wrestling Outquest Things, Trish and Sarah, Tunnel Talk, and Sam Brown's AEW Match Guide. My name is Matt Maher, aka Imp, and this is your quick look back at the WWE week that was. 30 minutes of bubbling hot for the summer as we jump over to Friday Night SmackDown with its penultimate show and Monday Night Raw with its go-home show for SummerSlam. I mean that next week I will be doing the SummerSlam review and SummerSlam coverage, aka me have to do the big edit with all the fancy sound stuff because it's a big one. So anyway, hyping myself up a week in advance. That's way too early. That's way too early. I'm tired now. Way too long. So anyway, let's jump on over to SmackDown because we've got a big old tag team gauntlet to get through. So let's jump on. I don't normally talk about the tag division. Let's take this opportunity to do that. Let's jump on over to Friday Night SmackDown.
All gas, no brakes. Jacob Fatu just smashed Montez Ford. And my God, the Bloodline are #1 contenders.
The #1 contender tag team gauntlet for the WWE Tag Team Championships. Eye patch lower, substituted out for Jacob Fatu, just in case you thought the winner was in doubt. No need to worry, they did manage to find a replacement for the greatest wrestler in the world. Don't you worry. I still love how I call it toxic positivity engagement post stuff on Twitter has started praising Lower for his background acting and things. I'm like, it's nothing crazy. It's nothing crazy to talk about. Sail the high seas as Corbin Cruz started off with Angel Umberto of Legado del Fantasma. Apollo slipping out of Angel's wing clipper and tagging in Big Banter for a swift end of days. The way of the gauntlet, it's over just like that. Also, I don't know what the tag team name is. I assumed it was Baron Corbin and Apollo Crews. So, all aboard the Corbin Crews. That's what it is. Street Profits out third. Ford dropping Apollo incredibly high on his neck from a back body. And I'm not even joking when I say they're getting Baron Corbin over as Cruz launches the tall man over the top rope for an assisted dive. Dives galore, leaves Apollo on his lonesome. A straight punch from Dawkins put an end to that fire. Yes boy! Pretty Deadly out fourth, looking for a quick steal. That failing and into Buddy leg working and stompy stomps on Ford we swing. Blockbuster from the heavens calls Graves ahead of the Profits scoring their second fall. The OC, our penultimate entrance, Anderson and Gallows, bubbling through the ad break and a sudden roll-up from the Profits to send us into Tonga and Fatu, making their entrance ahead of the next ad break. So what I can't tell is, do I actually, because I obviously rip on all the themes in WWE, do I not mind Fatu's theme, as in it's alright? Or does the production around it, because they've managed to put all the production to kind of feed into the way his theme works, does that fit his entrance enough where it elevates it? But maybe Fatu's is just maybe one of the better ones. One of the better new ones. And it doesn't hurt that the man himself is such an amazing talent. But Tonga and Fatu made their entrance ahead of the next ad break. In the UK, our ads have 15-minute gaps between them. So to us, watching WWE live, it's an horrendous experience. Constant ad breaks. So what do you mean we're going to another ad break? We've just come back. We've been conditioned, we've learned. Our ad break is technically longer because I think it's more like closer to 5 minutes, whilst they're shorter in America, but there's so many more of them. And Raw Live seemingly likes to... Because one thing I've learned with American television as well, there's a lot more freedom to place more ads within your show if possible, but obviously they're trying to not take the piss. But you watch Raw, and it's like, this is taking the piss, mate. I've been back for 2 minutes. What do you mean you're going back for another ad break? I'm used to the set standard, 15 minutes. Then there's a 5-minute thing, block. And then you've got another 15 minutes. Like, what do you mean? We've just come back. Why are you going back to adverts? The Profits running on fumes as they try to fight their way through the Bloodline beatings. Tezza's somewhere over the ring post dive got a huge pop, as always. Hope singing for a second, but Fatu is the difference maker once again. A pop-up Samoan hit with great force, then Fatu so swiftly sprang into his pop-up moonsault, astounding the crowd again, and almost making the win look easy. It felt like it was never really a thing in doubt, but I did have relatively decent fun with this match. I liked it, I enjoyed it. Me saying that, just quickly realising, the SmackDown tag team scene is now all about building the Bloodline up. So, the Bloodline are going to win those tag belts. I'm assuming it was going to be the Tongans. It was going to be the Gorillas that were going to be tag team champions. Maybe Jacob Fatu's just impressed so much that it screams, stop putting belts on this man now and building him up in the mid-card. Or maybe Lower legitimately has got something up with him. Not giving. I assume the eye was a whole TV story reason for him to not be doing it. But yeah, that's where they're at the moment. This is all part of the building up the bloodline. And I still believe that everything is screaming that Roman Reigns is going to be there at SummerSlam. This episode felt like, I mean, they did it last week as well, but Solo Sikoa has now started really projecting it. No, he's been painting the picture that Roman Reigns is going to be there, and even bouncing off the thing of directly calling out Roman Reigns. Like, this is Solo Sikoa telling you that Roman Reigns is going to show up at SummerSlam, rather than not mentioning the man at all, because the crowd are chanting him. Kind of in this new era where the characters are allowed to acknowledge when a crowd has been chanting a thing for so long, that character will then react to that thing that's been happening. Like the crowd chanting Roman Reigns the whole time, Sikoa is now allowed to react. It's like, well, if he wants to show up, I am the tribal chief, he can acknowledge me. Rather than in the past where it kind of feels like he either told to shut it down or just not recognise it because they want it to be a surprise, but the fans are seeing it coming. So instead of trying to treat it like a surprise, why not just lean into it a bit more and have him directly call the man out? So you set him up turning up. The necessity for him arriving by beating up Kevin Owens and beating up Randy Orton, so Cody hasn't got a friend, so it has to be somebody else to save him. Now Sikoa is directly calling him out, so he's got a grievance with Sikoa more than he would have normally to also come out and beat him up. That said, I'm fully expecting the angle to play out as if they're teasing Roman being on the side and doing it when you know what's going to end up happening, but they have set it up though. All this tag team stuff is also feeding into that in building up the rest of the bloodline, giving them some momentum. And obviously, Jacob Fatu. Oh, he's amazing. He is amazing. He was the get. Out of all the other people, he was the get that the WWE snapped up. He was the star talent, and it absolutely screams it. I mean, I don't mind Tama Tonga. I enjoyed his work, especially towards the end in New Japan. But you just watch Jacob Fatu, it's like, immediately attention grabbing. Yes, you're the man. That's you. Speaking of tag team scenes, this show also focused on the women's side. It's also set up for next week of a bunch of tag team title matches as well ahead of SummerSlam. So speaking of tags, Belair and Cargill had their talk, in quotation marks, with the Scottish champions, calling out the tag champs who said they'd be there, the music playing, but it's the rules for an attack. But you don't try to jump the superheroes. Have they not watched the movies? Belair and Cargill making easy work of the duo and throwing them out. Feels a bit like, we gave the Scottish a win in Glasgow, but we didn't exactly have any championship plans for them. So back to the originally planned superheroes we go. Gave them their moment, but it's the situation we ended up in a lot more regularly with Vince when he just did the booking on a whim type of thing. But that's because that's not really what... This feels the closest to that, but in a more positive way rather than the negative way of run on Vince on that era for. In this time, it's more like you gave them the belts for a nice, happy pop for the home crowd and obviously meant a massive a lot to people involved in the angle as well. But they also had no plans because so outside of that moment, them as champions hasn't really gone anywhere because there was no real plan for it. I thought they might go somewhere by using it to give Cargill and Belair like a struggle with over the course of the summer, because if there is that story about them having that struggle over the course of the summer, it felt like it was the teasing of them struggling and then they were losing their Queen of the Ring qualifying matches. Then we get to the next bit. It's like, okay, so they team up as a team. Then for me to really sell them struggling as a team, they would need to lose as a team as well. Like, properly lose it here. To build up that animosity, the Cody Rhodes animosity. To properly build it up. But it doesn't feel like they're going to do that. It feels like, yeah, back to the original plan we go. And they become champions again for the next little period. It's that feeling that the division feels smaller than it is. And that's down to the booking. Which means when Belair and Cargill win the titles, there's not really any opponents that you feel have got momentum for them to face. But also at the same time, if they're not the champions, then it feels like there isn't really a division. So the division's definitely better with them as champions. And it feels like they're going to use it to tell the story of Belair and Cargill building to their WrestleMania match. I much prefer them doing it this way, instead of what was the original thought that was going around, where they were going to do Belair Cargill at this year's WrestleMania. I much prefer the idea, or they've gone with through here, where easing Jade in through all the tag stuff and build up her versus Belair to be at WrestleMania next year. And I remember at the time talking about which one I'd turn babyface, which one I'd turn heel, but I think I'm fine either way. There's positives and negatives for both of them to do it, and they're both great talents in that way, so whoever turns, whoever stays, I feel like it should work. Just don't trust what you see on Twitter, because I think whoever they turn heel and whoever they turn face, there's going to be people moaning about whichever one because they should have been the one to turn heel, turn face, and the opposite's fans will be arguing the opposite. Yeah. Anyway, jump on over to the rest of the show. Our main event was also a tag team match. Michin Miyim and Bayley versus Nia Jax and Tiffany Stratton. Jax and Miss Money in the Bank jumping Mia on her entrance. Bayley with a kendo stick put a halt to that, but was the damage already done? The match given 8 minutes to build up Bayley's beating and hope spots. Mia Yim ringside holding her arm going for the entire time. Yim finally back in for the final few, but accidentally working distraction as Stratton wallops Bayley with the Money in the Bank briefcase. Nia Jax taking advantage and sitting on her for the win. What is that finisher called? I can't keep saying that she just sat on her. But this gave Nia a visible pin on the champion ahead of SummerSlam. Given how WWE stories flow, that doesn't bode well for the challenger. Other notes from SmackDown, just to show how little this show really had on it. Cody had a produced to camera VTR in a bar, challenging Solo to meet him in the ring 101 on the Smackers ahead of SummerSlam next week. The show ended with Solo accepting in his own produced VTR with the exact same lighting and stuff of last week, so it was just filmed last week. We are definitely in that period of just bubbling along until we get to the actual show. It's partly why I don't review when it's time for a pay-per-view. My shows have a format anyway. I don't want to be talking about 3 shows on it. It's kind of a reason I dropped NXT. But to talk about the SmackDown before the pay-per-view kind of just diminished the whole value of the pay-per-view in a way in terms of the amount of effort and time I would dedicate to the pay-per-view, because that's the actual important part. And especially in the Triple H era, the shows kind of, as we're getting closer to the events, they just kind of bubble along. Like they are what they are, you know what you're getting at that point. There's not really anything new being added, it's just continuing to try and bubble a little bit of momentum without really doing anything crazy. So, I can just skip them in the review. And the same could be said, I think I said it for the last 2 weeks. This will be show number 3, I'm like, yeah, you know where all of this stuff is going. It's just bubbling along now. It's bubbling along. Also next week, both men's and women's tag team titles will be on the line. LA Knight did a great to-camera promo walking through backstage and Gorilla to open up the show. In my head, I was just appreciating how much I liked his yapping compared to Ripley oozing confidence without saying a word on her entrance. The jabbering man faced Santos Escobar to give him a win ahead of the slams of summer and to give him a free lamp on Logan Paul until Buddy Santos helped swing into a villainous 2-on-1. Naomi also is going to get her hits back on Davenport. Uptown Down Under interrupted the show to wax lyrical on the Boxer Man who was ringside last week. And then as I'm watching it, it's like, oh, he's got a boxing in Saudi Arabia. That's why he's here. That's why Boxer Man's here. He's got a Saudi Arabia. That's why. It suddenly all makes sense. I'm assuming any Americans listening to this will know who he is and be like, what do you mean you don't know Boxer Man? I was like, well, he's Boxer Man. I don't watch boxing. I don't watch British boxing. Never mind American boxing. Why would I know who Boxer Man is? Well, everyone knows who Boxer Man is. I'm not from America. I don't know who Boxer Man is. Anyway, speaking of things I don't know, I'd not heard of St. Paul, Minnesota. We spent a whole 3 hours there on Monday with Monday Night Raw. So let's jump on over to the next show that's just bubbling up to SummerSlam. But this time it's a bigger one. It's a bigger deal because it's the go-home show. It's the final Raw. What was the final stuff that they did ahead of the show? So let's jump on over to Monday Night Raw. I've been singing the praises of this feud since Money in the Bank every week on this podcast. But on the final show before the big event, they swung one big oof. It just, for me, did not hit. And also, before I get into it, that I did see some takes on Twitter from people whose opinion I do respect, blaming the crowd. But they showed a clip, and I guess the point of the clip was like, no, this is a good clip. It's just that the crowd are rubbish. And my immediate reaction was like, nah, that's not the reason. No, it didn't get reaction. Not because the crowd were bad. This isn't the kind of thing where you blame the crowd for being bad. It's not a bad WWE crowd. It's like, those do exist. That said, the reason that didn't get a reaction wasn't because it was a bad WWE crowd. We'll get into it in this. So, social media is kind of just full of surface level basic analysis. They're not really getting anything from. Kind of why I follow specific people. So if I go into my following one's pretty decent, pretty good. If I suddenly don't realise for a second that it's for me to switch back to For You, that's the one they want you on. That's the one with all the disinformation and stuff. That's the one they actually want you on. For all the money side of it, they want you on the For You one. But yeah, my one where I'm following actual people I kind of trust a little bit more. I'm going to get the people who actually are doing the actual analysis rather than the surface level engagement stuff is on my following. There aren't that many people with the blue ticks on my following. There aren't that many. So if you are a blue tick person on my following, that means I generally do value you. You've earned that position. Because there are a few people. Anyway, Seth and his all shoulders referee shirt came out first. bashing through his catchphrases before bringing the lads out. Lads, 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 look in my eyes. What do you see? What's been killed? The atmosphere. I've no idea how many people have seen Tim Vine at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Drew tried to pull Seth to his side on their shared hatred of Punk, but it didn't work because Mr. Rollins hates them both equally. Seth listed his rules sounding pretty lax, basically saying he will rule it how he likes. So that said, it feels like we're going to get a DQ match with a little bit of ref fun times from Seth. A kind of a weird promo caught between being a few different promos. Like the crowd cheering when Drew interrupted Punk going off on Seth was my proof of that, which is why the clip of a single line with the whole Punk stuff was not really emblematic of the entire thing. That bit was. The bit where Seth and Punk have been going off on each other for a little bit. The crowd aren't really responding, but they're making like noises at the beat moments they're meant to. Then Drew interrupts, gets us back onto the main topic, and the crowd cheer him. Like they are properly behind him. It's like, oh, that was not the intended response with what they were building up. And that's kind of your case in point. This was definitely a promo that meandered a bit too much. Drew McIntyre is meant to be the villain, gets cheered for bringing us right back to the sole focus of him versus Punk. The crowd reacted like the lads in the ring had gone off topic, reacting positively to Drew making his baddie promises. For me, proof that a promo's kind of backfired a little bit. The crowd was very muted whenever it came to Punk's turn. Like they chanted him saying, they chanted my name for 10 years. They sing Seth's song, "You're the third wheel here," to Drew. It got a small reaction, but it doesn't at all feel like it belongs in this feud, that line. Like, if Drew's the third wheel inserting himself, what was the summer of Punk attacks all about? What have we been doing for the past few months? What is this? In the Go Home promo, none of that was addressed. Instead, we were given a completely different story ahead of the match, focusing way too strongly on Punk and Seth Rollins. Punk having directly to amp the crowd to get them to react, to the point where Drew holding up Punk's wife's bracelet got not much of a reaction. Like, it'll be hot on the night. That's one of the things, I just want to put that out there. Or because this promo didn't quite hit, this is going to have absolutely no effect on how the match is received at the weekend. It's going to hit. The atmosphere is going to hit hard. WWE, I feel like it's going to nail all the production side of it. It's going to feel like a big match and the crowd are going to react positively to it. I have no doubt in my mind. This promo kind of stung and the crowd just kind of went a bit quiet. And they were hot for the entrances, but as the promo just went on, they seemed to just lose steam. Especially as Punk kept talking. They just lost steam. It's a strange one where they're kind of siding with the bad guy in the feud, even though the bad guy... When I say echoes of Hangman Swerve, I mean in an accidental way, where they've done the thing against Punk's family, but it doesn't matter because the crowd are choosing the bad guy. They're choosing to support him. So it'll be hot on the night, but it felt like the crowd were into one story, only for them to read a page from a completely different book. So a very strange promo. All three of them incredibly over. It's just that this was a bit of a... it's a bit of a missed one, really. Liv Morgan trashed the Judgment Day's Judgment Den. The stable dealing with the aftermath of last week through the show. A trashed hideout and a Sami and Jey Uso to take care of. I won't lie, Carlito's reaction trying to figure out of Rhea saying he needs to take responsibility and take care of Jey being, oh, I'd have to find my baby oil. It did make me laugh. Out of all the things he could have said, it's like, oh, I would, but... I'd have to find my baby oil. It's like, I can't mess without my baby oil. I just like that. Not surprising that, I would, but the oil, I guess I have to be somewhere else. Yeah, that didn't work. Also, spoilers, he didn't take care of him. Dominic Mysterio didn't fare much better against Sami either. Breaker in to get him his Zayn beating after, but the champion was fine with too much heart. Finn Balor in the main event against Gunther was the third and final Judgment Man set up to fail. With Priest and Ripley getting their moments at SummerSlam, this was his night to step up and go at it alone. So I guess that's his win? I guess? You put up a fight against Gunther. You weren't being all villainous, constant interference the whole time. So I guess that's a win. As a I don't know if they're semi-turning the Judgment Day babyface or if it's just for this feud with Gunther. With Damien Priest specifically, it feels like they are. Or they're kind of splitting the Judgment Day into like goodie and baddie. One of the theories that has been floated about is that Finn Balor is the one to join Liv Morgan instead of it being Dominic Mysterio. Then he kind of got bigger split within the Judgment Day. But also you could have Priest and Ripley maybe leaving the Judgment Day and Liv Morgan is the replacement within there. And you've got the other lads in there as well, where JD would definitely be on that side. I don't know where Collier would fall. Come on, because whenever whenever they've walked into the arena, then they have kind of got them split into 3 sections. Carlito's the third section by himself, just carrying the bags. So I don't know where his lane is. But one of the theories is that it's Finn Balor who's going to do the turn. Because one thing that's definitely been set up is in the Liv Morgan Rhea Ripley match, somebody's turning, and it absolutely screams in my head that Liv Morgan is retaining. Absolutely screams it. It's which person turns. Is it the, for me, most boring one and the one they've set up in Dominic Mysterio? When I say set up, it's just been me watching this feud being like, come on, get to the next point. Kick into the next gear. Come on. And what ending would make me point at the sign more than anything? Dominic Mysterio turning, joining Liv Morgan, snogging her on the stage, so we can repeat the Chris Jericho Christian ending from 20 years ago. We just do that the exact same thing over again. And that brings me very, very quickly into the other notes. Generally, when I say this was a go-home show bubbling stuff, that because there were lots of to-camera promos hyping up for SummerSlam, like, it's for me a decent way to make this feel like a go-home show. I like this stuff being on a go-home show. It just means, it takes up time on the show, and all I'm going to do is say they had a to-camera promo that was pretty decently building up the match, meaning I've not got a lot to talk about. I've got 2 things. The Liv Morgan Rhea Ripley thing, we've hit on all of those notes already, and this is just the final beat of it, because it's really, her stuff was in the background while she got a video promo. It was really just about giving Judgment Day a little bit of time in the ring to show them losing in their current state. Punk, Drew McIntyre and Seth Rollins. So aside from that, not a lot to talk about this week's Raw. It was stuff continuing to bubble. But again, the likes of Damian Priest, CM Punk, Breaker, Morgan, Ripley, they all got their own produced videos, just like Cody Rhodes did on SmackDown. I like it. me saying, I'm already into the other notes I didn't much talk about. It sounds like a negative, but really it's a positive. Because I really do want that on my... It's the type of thing I want on my go-home shows, because it makes it feel like a go-home show. It makes the pay-per-view feel more important. Like on the final week of it, where you're meant to be getting amped and hyped up for the pay-per-view. That's the main point. The number of TNA shows I watched back in the day where I had no idea there was a pay-per-view that weekend. It happened more than once. And I was an avid watcher of TNA back in, I want to say 2009, it was pre-Hogan. Where I was the biggest TNA fan. I would watch that show every single week. But numerous occasions, they just wouldn't tell you this show was coming up, and it would either be like very quick reminders during the show or whatever. They just forget to tell you it was this weekend. Just like, my God. Anyway, Otis and Tozawa faced the Creed brothers, Maxine having enough afterwards and slapping Gable, Chad yapping, but the lights down before he can do anything. This is in the other notes this week because the main music played here, aside from the piano, was Rowan, Gacy and Loomis lifting their masks to reveal and set up a tag match for next week, getting our first sight of physical interaction for the White Six as they beat up the baddies. Late in the show, Mercy the Buzzard Loomis got his spooky VHS tape. The reason in the other notes is, we're setting up the actual thing for next week, which is the tag team reveal. And last week I talked all about, I've kind of liked what they've done ever since the debut. Wasn't a massive fan of the debut. Trying to be grounded, you can't do spooky smoke. Whilst this is technically more grounded than what Vince would do, because it's not sci-fi powers, really. It's all spooky stuff that any normal person could technically do. But yeah, I've been a fan with it since the debut, so I'm not like actively against all this stuff. Like, yeah, it's fine. We'll see next week how they debut in the ring. Sheamus and Bronson Reed had their big boy bangers and mash. Pete Dunne's shillelagh shot covering the matching gravy, so Reed's tsunami can land with a splash. I was maybe hungry watching Raw. Maybe I was hungry. And finally, Woods got his one-on-one with Karrion Kross. It was a match that happened in a feud that was. And then we swiftly move on. I was watching this. I kept forgetting that Karrion Kross was trying to recruit Woods, because it didn't make sense in my mind why that would be a drive, because it was never really addressed definitely why they wanted him. They didn't sell me on the fact why Kross would want him, so when Kross kept saying it, I didn't believe he did. And the way this match went was like, I don't get it. Like, fine. So yeah, it was a feud that was. But that brings me to the end of the review. This is going to be a particularly short review. Like last week, I cut down a 1 hour thing all the way down to like 30-something minutes. Just like, I had a lot of stuff to cut out last week. This week, this is going to be a properly short one. I'm already, my recording is shorter than the full length of the last one, and I'm going to come in, I'm going to edit it. I've made blunders I need to cut out and stuff. So anyway, that does bring me to the end of the review. It will give me a bit more energy, because next week is the big one. Next week is SummerSlam, where we'll go through the biggest show of the summer, the slams of the summer. And we know what direction we're heading into as we hurtle towards War Games and probably Bloodline versus Bloodline. That's my prediction from now. So anyway, with that, I say thank you for listening, liking, engaging in any form, any manner. Always appreciated, never taken for granted. I'll be back this time next week to talk about SummerSlam. Please do check out the other shows here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. We're in a great place right now. Full of such positivity. Whenever you get any of us talking about it on any show or whatever, we'll just be singing the praises. So with that, I bid you adieu. Adios.